Week 2 of the NFL season is almost in the books. We've had one of the games of the year between the Cowboys and the Giants, an overtime thriller. The Lions seem back. The Indianapolis Colts look completely different with Daniel Jones. And the Chicago Bears look the same, unfortunately, with Caleb Williams. And of course, there are huge concerns around Joe Burrow and his turf toe injury, which has recently been announced to be sidelining him for up to 3 months, and how that is going to impact the Bengals and their season. All this and more is coming up on week 2's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The good being the highlights, the bad being the lowlights, and the ugly being the downright disastrous. Discussing all of that and more in today's review, I'm joined by my co-host, Nick Corbs. Nick, week 2 gives and week 2 takes for you as a Giants fan.
On my birthday as well, Dom. I thought the NFL gods were going to smile on me once, just this once, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. But what a great week of football, and I can't wait to talk about it.
It was a really rough watching. We were watching it together, me and Nu, in my flat. We were watching the Giants game. We had it on the big screen meaning a moderately sized television. And it was electric, frankly. It was brilliant. We'll talk about it in just a moment, but it was a brilliant game with fantastic ups and pretty heartbreaking downs, all of which we're going to get into. And without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about the good in this game, which was obviously Russell Wilson. I said, I think in the last video he did, Nu, I said that the biggest problem with Russell Wilson is that he's trying to play like it's 2017 when it's actually 2025. But he was actually playing like it was 2017. He had the craziest stat line I've seen in a long old time from a quarterback. His career high in passing yards. Bear in mind that Russell Wilson is one of the better slingers we've seen in the NFL. 30 for 41, 450 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. What was the good for you from that game, Nu?
I just think the Giants offense having a spark for the first time in years. Neighbors, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wan'Dale Robinson, 140 yards and a touchdown. Cam Scatterboo having an almost breakout game. I thought the Giants offense looked high-powered for once since the last time they made the playoffs. Brian Daboll is an offensive coach, he's an offensive mind. And really, he's back to his Coach of the Year form with putting up 37 points on admittedly a very bad Dallas defense, but you can never turn your nose up at 37 points.
It was a brilliant performance from Russ. I didn't realise Wan'Dale had that many yards himself. Obviously, he came up big at the moment, but Malik Neighbors, man, I think that Malik Neighbors is knocking on the door of being a top 5 wide receiver in the league already. I think, in my mind, he is up there with that kind of next tier down, like the Nico Collins is, where it's obviously at the top. I think Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase, I think, are the kind of the consensus 3 there. But I think Malik Neighbors is 7, no lower than that really right now. I'd say he is just that damn good. I think it'd be dishonest to say, he's good for a rookie, he's good for a sophomore player. He looks like the real deal and is a huge reason why the Giants were even remotely in that game. His ability to just go up and get it as a smaller 6-foot receiver, but also then be super shifty and agile. He is just that brilliant. But I actually wanted to talk a bit about Russ, actually, because I think his performance, him turning back the clock, was so interesting, because I think he's playing like a man who knows he's got nothing to lose. Play too conservatively and you lose. Well, Jackson Dart's there. I mean, Jackson Dart was even brought into this game in some sort of tandem QB package thing, when Russ was the clear hot hand. And I think that if he plays the kind of style of offense which he has, played in Pittsburgh and in the last year in Seattle, and really his time at Denver as well, really the last 3-4 years of his career, he's going to get benched sooner rather than later. And seeing him just no one, I think, in the league, maybe Aaron Rodgers, I think it's Russ and Rodgers, have that moon ball like anyone else. I know there are quarterbacks like Mahomes and Herbert that have the arm talent and the arm strength, but just when the ball goes off the screen and comes down in the literal bucket, the perfect place, the wide receiver's hands, the accuracy and the anticipation, and just your hand-eye coordination, really, to be able to track the receiver that deep is just another level. And I think if he becomes a vet that is not afraid to sling it and is always going to kind of keep your offense around it, be a bit fearless, make a mistake here and there, but ultimately keep the chains of the offense moving, I think he's going to find a job, even if he does get benched for Dart.
Well, I think the head coach Brian Dable is also playing with house money at this point. He knows that if he doesn't make the playoffs, they're gone. The Giants have looked so cagey with Danny Dimes, with Tommy DeVito in previous
Yes,
years,
yeah.
and now they know that they're just going to throw everything to the wall and see what sticks. Because at the end of the day, if they're 2-6, they'll just start Jackson Dart and they'll go down with the ship anyway. So I think Russ is playing with complete freedom, knowing that if he wins games, he's staying in, and they're just going to let him ball out, which might have varying levels of success because even though Russ was back to that 2017 form, unfortunately in the end, his newer form showed out and lost the Giants the football
we
game.
will definitely be getting onto that with Russ. I think
but
in our bad or ugly, we'll see.
But more overall, it was one of the most exciting games of football I've seen in years. As a Giants fan, it's the most I've cared about a game in 2 years. The fact that when me and you were watching it, Dom, we were literally standing up on the sofa cheering at the TV. And even though we lost, it was still such a great game. So despite the scoreline, it's still in the good for me as well.
Football's the real winner here, guys. Football's the real winner. Well, I have another and it's another quarterback finding some. It's not even old form, really. It's kind of unfound form, and that is Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts. Indiana Jones, baby. What a nickname that is, by the way. That's got aura. When Danny Dimes is getting hugs from his offensive lineman and he's got like his aura back, you know that something incredible has happened. And it's beating the Denver Broncos, who at least preseason and up until now, we do think that they're a top 5 defense. It might be by the end of the season they're not be if they're getting this amount of points hung up on them by Daniel Jones and the Colts. Or maybe they're just that good, really. It's crazy how different he looks. He is playing clinical, clean football. He's getting the ball out early. He's getting it out on time. He's throwing it to Justin Timberlake. I got JT on my notes.
Jonathan Taylor.
Bringing sexy back. He's throwing it to Jonathan Taylor up the sideline. He's hitting like 24 miles, like 23, 22 miles an hour, whatever it might be. Like that's kind of the perfect example. Daniel Jones gets the ball out, looks directly at where Jonathan Taylor is, throws it like that's what was open, saw it pre-snap, saw it immediately post-snap, got the ball to him, and they picked up a chunk play as a result. That is, I think, it's crazy to see what a quarterback can do when he is in a new situation, which has a good offensive-minded head coach, which has a good offensive line and good weapons on the offense as well. Like, obviously, yes, of course, you're kind of like semi-playing quarterback on easy mode, but he looks like a different quarterback to whoever he was in New York.
It's true, I think, but at the same time, I do think there's a little bit of buyer beware and pumping the brakes a bit early. Daniel Jones has always been a good game manager, an okay field general. When the Giants look good, he was good, but the thing is, he's behind a really good offensive line and a healthy offensive line with good receivers. I reckon when he starts to get rattled, it's how he got booted out in New York. The media attention got to him. The lights were too bright. And now he's gone to Indianapolis. And to be fair, he is thriving. But there's part of me still thinks that you might see the old Danny Dimes come back later in the season. It's reminiscent of the Saints from last year.
I thought you might say the Saints from last year point. And I would kind of agree, except for the fact that I do really trust Shane Steichen. I think that he is a really good offensive mind. He just has, unfortunately, himself been in a really bad situation with just a medley of quarterbacks that haven't been able to get it done. They're not physically able enough. Richardson couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat trying to hit a slant 5 yards down the field. And the play designs that he's coming up with. When Daniel Jones, you're right. Like Daniel Jones is a limited quarterback. You'd be foolish to think otherwise. If you need to hit anything further than 15 yards down the field, he's going to struggle. However, like the play design, they ran sail, which is like a certain route concept where Tyler Warren ran through the A gap and then ran a deep out. And he was wide open as a result. And it's that kind of play design, like letting Daniel Jones be in a position to succeed. Don't put the pressure on him to throw a perfect, like Russell Wilson moon ball or like a back shoulder fade down the sideline. If you do need to hit downfield, scheme it open for him as best you can, though. Give him favorable matchups, give him favorable looks. And I think that it's one thing to beat the Dolphins, but beating, again, the Broncos, I want to stress, they're a good team. They're a good defense. The offense is definitely having its struggles, and Bo Nix is struggling. I don't think enough people are talking about that struggles, despite us we're not going to touch on that today. But I do think that that's a legit win. And in a wide open AFC South, the Texans could well be 0-2 by the time this video is published, really, against the Buccaneers tonight. The Jags are, 1-1? Are they 1-1? They
Yeah,
0
lost to the
2.
Bengals. Yeah.
So and it's kind of their division for the taking, and whoever wins that division will get a playoff. Will get a playoff berth. So they could be one of the few like early locks for playoffs, almost, despite not potentially being the strongest team just because of how weak the rest of the division is. You want to talk about the new kickoff rule, though, Nu?
I do. This is a big good for me, Dom. I think for a lot of our time being NFL fans, the kickoff was just a formality. It was a waste of time. During the Super Bowl, one of our friends left £100 on the touchback, and it was the most exciting thing. It was the most exciting
Man, that was
kickoff
an
I think
infinite
I've
money
ever.
glitch.
It is, yeah, exactly. It's the most exciting part of the kickoff. But now these new rules have revitalized the kickoff. Going to the Patriots versus Dolphins game. I know one was a punt return and one was a kickoff, but special teams changed the way that game was. And it's so rare that you can say that. The fact that now special teams on kickoff and punt return is such a weapon. Like you said, with Brandon Aubrey nailing a 60-yarder, the fact that you only need 30 yards to 2-3 first downs to be in scoring range, I think makes it the offense and makes American football so much more exciting. So I'm such a big fan of these new rules. I think it's only going to get better and better and higher scoring from special teams, which I absolutely love.
See, I'm going to be a bit of a boomer here, and I don't think it's I don't think it's bad, but I don't think I'd put it in good just yet, purely because of what you said. I think that we see in the Cowboys game, kickers in the NFL these days routinely hit 55-yarders. Like, if you don't have a kicker that can kind of nail a 55-yarder, you need a new kicker. And the best ones in the league, Boswell, Aubrey, Koo maybe on his day, could nail 60 plus. And when you can nail a field goal from that far away and you're getting the ball at the 35 or further, let's say, if you get a good return, then you only need what? 1, 2, 3 normal plays, like first downs, 10-yard plays, not even explosive plays to then win the game potentially. I don't know. I just think that it was a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to points being down across the league because of the kind of the defense, basically. Defenses in the NFL working out how to stop the high-powered offense. The pendulum swung back towards the defense. You are in 2 high shells post-snap, and then you rotate out of it. Sorry, yeah, 2 high shells pre-snap, rotate out of it post-snap. And that's kind of put a cap on modern NFL passing attacks. And then as a result, the NFL just kind of introduced this, we're going to now move the touchback line to the 35-yard line. I don't know. I don't think it's bad, but I know that if my team, the Texans, were winning a game by 2 points, let's say we just scored a touchdown to take a 2-point lead, and there's 30 seconds left on the clock, and we kick the ball back, I'm like, well, it's still their game to win at this point because they only need to get 3 first downs, and they've won the game.
I hear what you're saying, but I still disagree. I think what you're saying is valid. That is not that long a distance, but I also think the league will adapt, and teams will adapt, and kickers will adapt, and there'll be new ways of limiting that return. I think, like any sport, the rules should change when problems rise, and the kickoff was a massive problem. And yes, maybe it's been overcorrected, but I think defenses and kickers and special teams will be able to adapt.
Yeah, true. I mean, you are right. Special teams was kind of falling by the wayside, particularly. It was more just like a tradition to go out there, kick the ball, and come back off the field again. So I agree with you. It did fix a problem. I'm just worried it might have overcorrected said problem. But my final good, then, before we move on to the actual bad, is that the Lions' demise was maybe, we don't know yet because it still is only week 2, but maybe it was a premature overreaction. And I was one of the people that said that, by the way. I'm not just talking about other people. I also was concerned about the Lions' offense after week 1. They whipped the Bears, though, 50-21, an absolute shellacking. Offense looked dominant, dare I say, like they had Ben Johnson back. You know, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 3 touchdowns. Jameson Williams was sprung loose multiple times as well. That was kind of Ben Johnson's calling card. I was always sure that Amon-Ra would continue to be great because he is a fantastic wide receiver. His hands, I think, are some of the best in the league. He can just catch genuinely everything. But when Jameson Williams was also getting involved, someone that has traditionally struggled in the NFL, kind of trying to find his role, I was like, I think the Lions might be able to refine that Ben Johnson form. And the defense looked really strong as well. Yes, it's the Bears, and we'll talk about the Bears later. But I think that the real issue for the Lions was that in the first week of the season, they came up against, in my opinion, the strongest team in the league right now, which is the Green Bay Packers. And that was even when they only had Michael Parsons playing a handful of snaps. But even so, I think the Packers right now, to me, look like the most complete team in the league. And so I think that it was a harsh week 1 matchup for the Lions coming against them in week 1. And so it might be that we look back at it and think, yeah, apart from that first week 1 matchup with the Packers, this Lions team actually is kind of looking like the Lions of old.
Yeah, it could have been an overreaction from us, Dom. But having said that, losing Aaron Glenn, losing Ben Johnson, and having such a poor week one performance, all the indicators were there. But you're right, they bounced back in such a big way, 52 points. It got to the point where they were running up the score that people were asking Ben Johnson if he was angry. As if they should have taken out Jared Goff, and he had to say, no, it's completely fine. Like we said, we're going to talk about that later. But yes, you're right. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams. I still rate Jared Goff probably more than you, Dom. I've always been a Jared Goff fan. And Amon Ra. It's pretty easy to be a good offensive coordinator with that amount of wealth of talent around you.
Oh, and I would I say that the Lions are a wealth of talent if Jared Goff's their quarterback? Where would you put Jared? I'm putting you on the spot right now, but where would you put Jared Goff in the list of current quarterbacks based on what we know about them?
It's a boring answer, but I would say 15 to 12, sort of that range.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say you've got a wealth of talent if your quarterback's only 15 to 12 personally, but it's a personal gripe, nothing more. Let's then move on to the bad. And why don't you kick us off with your first bad?
So my first bad is also from the Giants game, and it's Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator for the Giants. Laying up 40 points is an absolute embarrassment, playing soft shell defense when all they need is 20 yards, when you've got the best kicker in the league who's automatic from 55. When we were watching it live, both of us just said, okay, I know they're going to hit a crossover 20 yards over the middle of the field. And guess what? That's what they did. But the bigger issue I have is that the Giants have one of the best pass rushers in football. Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence. Those are 4 Pro Bowl level players, and very rarely were they on the pitch at the same time. There was a 3rd and 10 where they had 2 genuine Uber driver defensive tackles, one who got a sack, had played 11 games over 4 years. When there's an obvious passing down, you should have your 4 best pass rushers who are able to generate pressure without even blitzing, yet he still couldn't even do that. So for me, it is absolutely infuriating. Only 10% of snaps in week 1. That amount of snaps did rise, but it's still not nearly enough. The Giants have a lot of talent on defense, yet they're conceding 40 points against George Pickens. I know CeeDee Lamb's obviously a great wide receiver as well. And also, sorry, Dom, his name, Javonte Williams as well. How are you letting him run all over you? It's actual rage bait from Shane Bowen, and I'd be shocked if he's in a job for much longer.
Well, look, UNC Javonte Williams seems to be back, ladies and gentlemen, which is quite something for us because me and you have him in our dynasty team now. So careful, that's one of our men right there. But it's interesting watching them. Well, it wasn't interesting. It was kind of painful, really, to watch that final kind of Cowboys drive because the Giants were playing like they didn't know the Cowboys had Brandon Aubrey, who could nail a 60-yarder in his sleep. They were acting like they had some kind of Brit Bowl kicker who could nail a 30-yarder with a bit of luck and with his eyes closed. But it was odd to see them playing so soft. It's kind of my pet peeve, right? That kind of prevent defense, which I think the Cowboys had timeouts as well. It wasn't even like they were like trying to protect the sidelines and it was like, right, if you tackle them inbounds, then the clock's going to run out. They're really going to try to get a playoff. They were just letting the Cowboys have what they wanted. And you're right, when you have a pass rush like you do, you've got to set them loose. I know they're tired. That was on the comms. Brady was saying it. Like, I think it was Brady that was on the comms. But whoever was on comms was saying, like, it's tired legs, like it's hard. You got to dig deep. That's when you need your coaches to give you a bit of a riling speech. You need someone on the field to, be the leader. Maybe Dexter Lawrence, maybe Abdul Carter as a rookie. Who knows? Who cares? But you got to give it all for 4 more plays. And it just seemed like with that Javonte Williams run when they couldn't tackle him, it was all just kind of falling apart for the Giants. And it was like watching a slow death. Like, I'm sorry, I know it'd be more infuriating, but personally, I'd rather force Dak, who was dealing, by the way, I'd rather force Dak to hit CeeDee Lamb 40 yards down the field on the sideline with a defensive back in his hip pocket than hit a crosser to George Pickens for 20 yards unguarded. Like, that's how I'd rather lose. I'd rather force a player to beat me than to basically beat myself. And it was frustrating to watch, even not as a Giants fan. But what is also maybe less frustrating to watch for me, though, but still another talk about another offense, is the Eagles' offense. I think that the record is going to paper over some pretty concerning cracks. And I said this last week, and I'm going to say it again, that I'm getting very much vivid flashbacks to, 2023, 22 maybe, when the Giants had just lost Shane Steichen, and I always forget the Cardinals head coach. What's he called?
Gannon.
Yeah, and Gannon.
Is it Gannon? Yeah.
Yeah, it is Gannon. It is Gannon.
A weird bloke.
And the Eagles had went 9-0 and then lost like 5 on the bounce and then lost the first game in the playoffs. That's what's kind of happening here, at least offensively. I think the defense is looking brilliant. Like the defense is looking really, really strong. It is the offense. They're 31st in passing yards per game. Jalen Hurts has 2 completions of 10 plus air yards in 2 games. That is tied 34th in the league with Tyrod Taylor. Spoiler alert for those of you that aren't quite aware. There are only 32 NFL teams in the league, so really there's only about 32 quarterbacks. And he is second. He's tied 34th with 2 with Tyrod Taylor, who came in for just over half a game yesterday for the Jets when Justin Fields got injured. Kevin Patullo at the moment, the offensive coordinator, is relying on Saquon Barkley and the offensive line and the Eagles' defense to win games. And that will work. That has worked. That's how they've won. And against the Chiefs, no less. Like, don't get me wrong. The Eagles are that talented a team that they can do that. But God forbid they get in a shootout. God forbid they're trying to unlock A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. And that's what kind of makes it worse, is that I think that Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great one, like Eagles fans do, but I think he's a very good one. And when you've got a good passing quarterback and you've got A.J. Brown, and you've got Devonta Smith, to be 31st in passing yards, something's not right there. Something isn't right, despite the win, yes. And I think that people say, oh, Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that gets carried. And I think there's an element of truth there, but I don't think it's as negative. I don't mean it as negative as that comes across. But it's because he doesn't need to carry the team because of the talent that surrounds him. He's got a great offensive line. He's got great wide receivers. He's got Saquon Barkley. He's got an elite defense. And we've seen him carry the team in the Super Bowl, no less, right? Like, he is capable of doing that from time to time. But you're just simply not using the Eagles, specifically the Eagles offense, to the greatest of their ability when you're not using half of them. If you're not using A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith's receiving ability, and you're not using Jalen Hurts' passing ability, you're a one-dimensional offense. And I think it's going to come back to bite them.
They are one-dimensional, but the thing I would say, Dom, is, did you hear Chris Jones talking smack? And he said, you only got under 100 passing yards. And Jalen Hurts said, look at the scoreboard. Unfortunately, I think that is going to be the tale for a lot of the Eagles season. I think it's Jalen Hurts going to do not a lot, and Saquon Barkley and that great offensive line they're going to grind out teams. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think they should be a much better offense. But at the same breath, they're 2-0 and just beat the 2-time Super Bowl champs, who they obviously beat in the Super Bowl last year, but still one of the perennial best teams in football. I think, yes, they should be better, but because they're going to still do very well this year, I don't think it's that bad yet.
But that's my point. I don't think it is bad yet. They are 2-0, and they are a very good team, and they will continue to win games like that. But when it comes down to not being able to only win games by doing that, I think they're going to come into some trouble. And yeah, sure, that might not be until 2026 in the new year, in the playoffs, and they come against maybe the Ravens, maybe the Colts, maybe, well, they're in the NFC, so that'd be in the Super Bowl, but maybe, say, the Cowboys if they make it. Maybe, one of the other better teams, the Commanders, who knows, right? If you can't suddenly rely on just one facet of your offense, which is the run game, that's when it's going to come back to bite you. And I think this is going to be something we could see just people not talk about because of the record. Like, I think the Bills have a real big problem with their run defense. That has been exposed by the Ravens. It wasn't capitalized on by the Jets because Justin Fields went down. And that kind of thing is that these big teams will have big losses and everyone's going to go, oh, well, I thought they're brilliant. Because some of them have like really fatal flaws that you kind of need to be good enough to expose and good enough to stay in the game and continue to expose it. But I think it is going to come back to bite them at some point. Maybe not for a few weeks, but at some point. What's your next bad?
My next bad is Brian Thomas Jr. and his game against the Bengals. This is really concerning. The way he played in that game, I genuinely believe lost the Jaguars that game. He was directly responsible for the interceptions and the drop catch that lost them on that 4th and 5. And the thing that worries me the most is it looks like he's got the yips. Every time he's running across the middle of the field, he's flinching. He's getting out the way of the ball. He's actively not putting his hands up, even when he's not even going to get hit. And this lapse in confidence can genuinely be almost career-ending. That's why it's only bad on ugly, because I think it's only been week 2 and I haven't seen enough. And a player of his caliber should still bounce back from this. But the fact that it's entirely mental, the reason of those drops. His head was turned before he caught the ball. He drew his hand back from the ball and got intercepted by the safety. And there was another drop one in the end zone where the ball just hit him in the hand and he just didn't commit to it. For a player of his quality to have that much of a regression in such a short period of time is very, very concerning. But I hope that's not the end, and that's why it's only bad. But it's definitely cause for concern because the yips, it's not great.
The yips are a great way to describe it, I think, actually, which for any international listeners, it's what you get when you're a bowler, right?
It comes from baseball, I think, originally. Or
Yeah.
it's golf, it's any sport, really.
Yeah, well, you need to like repeatedly do the same thing over and over again. Yeah, exactly right. But yeah, cricket, golf, baseball, whatever you want, wherever it's from. I think the yips are a great way to describe it because he looks like a completely different player. And it's not even like Brian Thomas Jr. was a late breakout at the end of last year, and we're looking forward to seeing what we could see for him, like a Bryce Young, let's say, right? He was immediately fantastic. Like, was in the contention for being Rookie of the Year, in a really strong offensive Rookie of the Year kind of class. He didn't get it, but he was absolutely fantastic. Make no mistake about it. But he does not look like he did last year. He is scared of catching over the middle of the field. And Brian Thomas Jr. last year was more of a perimeter player. Like, think about that Colts game where the defender's like diving to try and touch his ankles and he's off. He was kind of always lined up outside. And weirdly enough, like loads of his production came with Mac Jones, of all people as well. Not even Trevor because of Trevor's injury that he had against the Texans kind of in the middle of the season. But at the moment, him and Trevor in the last 2 weeks, 5 for 19, so 19 targets, 5 catches, 62 yards, 1 yard after the catch. That is absolutely wild. 2 drops, 1 interception. One of the worst link-ups in football right now. And they are 2 very talented on the surface players. And I think Brian Thomas Jr. is just all over the shop. I think his terrible performance also goes beyond the stats, really. Like, the interception that he caused, the one that he kind of like knocked up to the safety. If you look at the All-22, I'm going to do a breakdown on this on TikTok. Dom Corbs NFL. If you go follow me.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. Got to explore the Corbs multiverse. Trevor Lawrence didn't really see the box safety, and yeah, look, Brian Thomas Jr. might have taken a hit. He might have taken a hit. However, that is kind of your job, and you're being paid a lot of money to do it. And if you don't want to do it, then don't. If you are scared, if someone that, like Tua, for example, if you were to step away from the game, I would have no issue with that whatsoever. If players don't want to get hurt, I completely respect that. I don't want to get hurt. I'm not on the field. But also, you're being paid enough money to do it. And I think that if you want to be a wide receiver in the NFL, which Brian Thomas Jr. is, so clearly he does want to be, you've got to be able to catch over the middle. Think about, someone like Julian Edelman, fearless, went over the middle. Lam McConkey will go over the middle. Amon-Ra St. Brown will go over the middle. Yes, you're going to get let out from time to time, but you've been playing the sport since you were old enough to walk. You know that. You know how to avoid those hits as best you can. And I think that Brian Thomas Jr. just lost his mojo. It was gone all game, like you say, in the end zone. That was one play. There was another play with alligator arms to drop it on that 4th down that Liam Cohen then got annoyed at. It was really bad, I think. It's not an ugly for me yet either. I would agree it's bad just because I think that it's only week 2 and they can kind of work it out. But 1 yard after the catch, for me, that's like a coaching issue there, because why are you not putting Brian Thomas Jr. in position to get more yards after the catch?
Bear in mind, someone like Tyler Lockett would get 150 yards after the catch per year just by falling on the floor after he caught the ball.
Exactly.
As someone who's played, me and you both played receiver, not maybe to the same quality. We were actually, Brian Thomas Jr. was looking a bit like us out there.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. I'm not judging him for not wanting to get hit, but you can't be an NFL wide receiver and not want to get hit.
But any contact sport, it's the one I'm one is if you go into contact harder, it hurts less and you're less likely to get hurt. The second you start flinching away and the second you don't like it, it's the beginning of the end. Yeah, but Dom, did you have one more bad?
Well, as soon as you stop seeking the contact out, it seeks you. But yes, I do have one more bad, and that for me is Xavier Legette and basically the whole Panthers receiver core not named Tether McMillan, who, by the way, McMillan looks absolutely legit, by the way, as I said.
Great take from us, Dom.
Yeah, we know ball. But Xavier Legette, I don't know if you've seen his stat line. -2 yards on 8 targets.
That's not real.
Criminal last week already, not getting both feet in the most routine sideline catch you'll ever see in your whole damn life. I already think Xavier Legette is a bust, and I know it's early relative to kind of receiver's career. He's only 1 season and 2 games in. But he was a fifth-year breakout. He's a great athlete, but you don't see that on the field. And I think all the warning signs are there, frankly. He is sluggish on the field for someone that runs damn quick. He can't win with physicality for someone that is damn big. And all but one of his 8 targets were a negative play in some way. Either -2 yards somehow. I don't really know how that happened, but it did. Or they were incomplete. One play was positive yardage when he was targeted. That cannot run. Drops are all over the place for the other wide receivers. The offensive line was not great. Yeah, Bryce Young wasn't great either. But honestly, I really do feel like, and we'll move on to the ugly after this, because I think this is going to be one of my better takes that I'm ever going to have. So strap in, new. I think that Bryce Young is going to be this generation's Sam Darnold. I think that the Panthers are going to be picking high enough to draft another quarterback. I think they're going to want to draft another quarterback. Dave Canales does not have the job security to give Young another spin if he's continuing to play like this, as he has over the last 2 weeks. But I think someone else is going to pick him up. And I think it's going to be someone that needs a quarterback, and he's going to play. And I think he's going to play pretty well. And I think he is going to be this generation Sam Darnold. You heard it here first.
Even more like a Danny Dimes.
Or both, career resurgence. Geno Smith, Danny Dimes. You pick one. There's one every 3-4 years. And look, they're all, even including Daniel Jones right now at least, they're all good quarterbacks. Let's move then to the ugly knee. Kick us off.
The big headline for the ugly is Joe Burrow potentially being out for 3 months, I believe, and requiring surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the superstar quarterback for the Bengals, his season's effectively over. And therefore, the Bengals season is over. In a season where they've sunk so much money into 4 players, and Joe Burrow is one of the biggest contracts in the NFL, isn't going to play another snap. I know that game with Jake Browning was a good comeback story. He threw 3 picks in that game. He did not look good. He had 1 good drive. I don't see the Bengals doing anything this year, and they've just wasted a whole lot of money to go 7-10.
It's really ugly. It's really ugly. This is kind of the embodiment of ugly. This is what ugly means. It means disastrous. Yes. And I think it's disastrous on so many levels. It is disastrous for Joe Burrow, who has another season missed now to injury. 2020, tore his ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus, missed the entire season. 2023, torn a ligament in his wrist, missed the entire season. And now in 2025, turf, toe, up to 3 months, that is going to essentially be the entire season. It's awful on that level. But for me, and it's awful obviously for the Bengals and their season outlook, right? The Chiefs are 0-2. The Ravens are 1-1. The AFC is looking like it could potentially be there for the taking. I know it's early days, but when you get an early lead, it's so much easier for you to keep that lead. It's easier to retain than it is to try and overtake. And finally, the Bengals get off to a start where they don't shoot themselves in the foot record-wise to start the season. They don't have a loss to the Patriots. And then, they lose their star quarterback. He goes down. They're now playing the next 5 games against the Broncos, the Packers, the Lions, the Steelers, and the Jets. And they also have the Ravens twice and the Bills later. The Bengals season is over. But really, for me, why it's so ugly is because I think that Joe Burrow is being inherently failed by the Cincinnati Bengals. And if something drastic, and I mean drastic, doesn't change, then I think he's going to be another what if, like Andrew Luck or like Matthew Stafford could have been if Matthew Stafford didn't leave. You cannot have an injury record like that, especially in a rookie year where you get your knee torn off almost. And then since 2020, the Bengals have spent 3 day 1 or day 2 draft picks on the offensive line. 3 in 5 years. What the hell are they doing? They pay Jamar Chase and T. Higgins all the money in the world, and they cannot put an offensive line out there for Joe Burrow to protect him. I think it's negligent team building, and I think that Joe Burrow is very much like Matthew Stafford in Detroit right now. And I think that the only reason why we think of Matthew Stafford as being one of the best quarterbacks of all time is because he has his ring with LA. And I think that Joe Burrow, if he can't get word from the owners that they're going to finally start paying players so they can finally start attracting big free agent deals, or something happens, I would want Joe Burrow to leave after this contract is up. Because why are you going to waste your career there when they're not going to look after you and they're not putting you in a position to not just succeed but to stay remotely healthy. I think it's an absolute joke. I think the Bengals continue to be the most incompetent, incapable, negligent franchise in the NFL, and I just think that Joe Burrow, frankly, is too good for them. They do not deserve Joe Burrow right now. And I don't know what you do, really. I don't know what you do, because you can't have a fire sale now that Burrow's out for the season, because you've got a top 5 quarterback and you want to build around Jamar Chase as well. So, like, who do you get rid of? T. Higgins, who you spent all offseason kind of... Who can you keep, Hendrickson or Higgins? I just think the entire thing about the Bengals is so infuriating. And I love Joe Burrow, and I just worry that Joe Burrow is going to become one of the greatest what ifs if he never wins a ring, and I don't think he's going to win a ring in Cincinnati.
I think that comparison to Matthew Stafford's really interesting. I haven't thought about that before, especially with Megatron being Jamar Chase. Obviously, very different players, but both of them being the most dominant receivers. I believe 1 and 2 all time. Oh no, Cooper Kupp had that season, I forget. But Megatron, 2,000 yards. Jamar Chase last year. Dom, we'll get Paddy to pull up the stat. I think it's 1,800 yards he had last year.
Bonkers.
But yeah, that comparison of just an amazing tandem duo being wasted on a poorly run franchise that, regardless of who's really playing, is always going to be run into the ground. I think it's scary. I think, Dom, do you know if... I know a lot of the teams have changed their turf because of the World Cup. Do you know if Cincinnati has?
I don't know. All I know is that they didn't have like an indoor training facility until about 2 days ago.
Yeah, they constantly get Fs on all those season report cards. If you're a free agent, why would you go there? They didn't even want to pay their first round pick, and they had the 30 and then the last ranked defense. They're a poverty franchise, and you're right. Joe Burrow deserves so much better.
And because of their cap management, because of how top heavy their roster is, they can't even afford to pay Kirk Cousins to come in and be their quarterback, who would be a fantastic option, I think, in getting the ball out. An upgrade from Jake Browning. Obviously, no Joe Burrow, but like that sat right there, and they just can't afford to pay him.
It's Jameis Winston, Dom. Jameis Winston is going to Cincinnati ASAP. Jackson Dart is the second quarterback on the depth chart. Jameis Winston, I think, is probably the 32nd best quarterback. And also, if you're a Bengals fan, or an NFL fan, you want to see Jameis Winston dealing out there to D. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Also to the other team's cornerbacks, but...
It'd be quite something. It would be quite something. Well, talking about quarterbacks then, because my next ugly is JJ McCarthy. And I think it's fair to say that at the time of recording this, which is just after week 2's finished, the Vikings have played one good quarter of football, and then therefore, by extension, as has JJ McCarthy. I think that the reason why it's ugly isn't because I think that JJ McCarthy is going to be a massive bust, or because I don't think the Vikings are going to make the playoffs. Those two things could be the case. Don't get me wrong, I can't say with confidence that it isn't. But really, for me, why this is in the ugly is because the expectations are just way too high for McCarthy to succeed. You're talking earlier about the lights being too bright in New York. Well, the lights are too bright in Minnesota because you're taking over from a quarterback that had a 14-win season last year, and you willingly moved on from a 14-win quarterback. Imagine being, say, Justin Jefferson or one of the veterans on the team. You are on a Super Bowl contending roster, and you were a 14-win team last year, and you've now willingly downgraded at quarterback. Your offensive outlook looks a little bit bleak. It could get fixed, don't get me wrong, but like that's bound to cause problems in the locker room, right? Like I know JJ McCarthy got in the huddle and said, is there anywhere else you'd rather be? And I love that. And as I get more into the sport, I find myself kind of gravitating more to that kind of thing anyway, like the personality and the ability to take it and the mental strength. You still got to be able to win games. And at the moment, JJ McCarthy cannot win games. He can't throw to his left. That was an issue in college. Look at his pass map on Next Gen Stats. Everything was going to his right. He looks like how we thought he would look. He is a talented player with a rocket of an arm, with effective mobility, but he is very inexperienced and he needs developing. And I just think that it might be not a huge mistake, but I think it might be quite a costly mistake that the Vikings have kind of set back their Super Bowl window by moving on from Sam Darnold, who I think they probably should have just paid and have JJ McCarthy be that kind of Jordan Love 3-year on the bench kind of backup, because you had it. Like what you draft a quarterback like that to win 14 games, and you just won 14 games. So it's tricky because yes, there's no Christian Darrisaw. That's really ugly. The Vikings offensive line looks terrible without him. Yes, there's no Jordan Addison. He's trying to Jalen Naylor. I think this will change. I think it will stabilize. I don't think it will be quite as bad as it has been last night. But I do think there's something ugly potentially brewing there.
I don't. I disagree with you, Dom. I think that Kevin O'Connell, who's normally a very, very good offensive-minded head coach, is limiting JJ McCarthy. When you watch that game
Oh,
back,
yuck.
when you watch that game back, all they do is do run, run, and then it's 3rd and 7, behind an absolutely terrible offensive line on an obvious passing down. JJ McCarthy is a rookie quarterback. This is his second start. I know he was drafted last year, but he's effectively a first rounder this year. I think it's fair to view him in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
And with the offense being so one-dimensional, when it's run, run, long pass, run, run, long pass, he's set up for failure. I think Kevin O'Connell is such a good offensive mind that this offense will evolve with him and it will get better. But I think at the moment, that offense does look very bad and that offensive line looks very bad. But I think JJ McCarthy has been dealt a pretty bad hand.
And you think JJ McCarthy's been dealt a bad hand by having
I'm not
Justin
talking about Justin Jefferson.
Kevin
I'm
O'Connell?
talking about the play calling. When you've got 3rd and long behind the offensive line, I don't think there's a worse.
That is criminal. Like this, I saw this take, and I was going to even bring it up, and I'm very glad you did because I get to engage with it now with you. Do you think then, based on everything that we know about Kevin O'Connell, him being able to take Sam Darnold, the reclamation quarterback, and take him to 14 wins, he has also had a big hand. I think it shouldn't go unmentioned that Daniel Jones was the backup last year as well. There, after he got turfed up from the Giants for a few months, and people have been saying that that's also really a massive part of Daniel Jones's development. Are you now saying that this is not on JJ McCarthy, who we know nothing really about apart from one start, or Kevin O'Connell, who we have literally 2-3 seasons now of like him being one of the best offensive minds in the league? The wealth of evidence there to me clearly shows that it is very unlikely to be Kevin O'Connell because of everything we know about him. Whereas JJ McCarthy is the unknown, and suddenly things are going wrong. I'm going to point to him as opposed to the known.
The play calling is the evidence you decede on.
But do you not? Do you think he doesn't trust McCarthy? I think he just doesn't trust McCarthy to operate anything more than that.
I know, but if he doesn't trust McCarthy, that is also his fault. Obviously,
he didn't draft
the GM.
him.
It was him and the GM. Yeah, he drafted him. Didn't trust him, and then got
card in though.
That's well, as GM head coach, I don't know the relationship, but I assume they're in tandem, and then that's also his fault. Then I think if you're starting a quarterback, you have to give him the keys, and they haven't quite given him the keys because maybe he doesn't trust him. You got to let him deal. And
if he's not ready to deal, then all that's going to do is mess up his development. You can't just give him the keys.
Well, Dom, dying behind that offensive line is ruining his development in the first place.
But this is the thing: I've said in the offseason that Sam Darnold had the 5th most dropbacks in the NFL last year. It was so pass heavy. JJ McCarthy comes from a very run heavy Michigan team. I don't think he's capable of handling what Kevin O'Connell wants to do. When you think of Kevin O'Connell, you think of a great passing game. You do not think of a great run game. It's not Detroit. It is not even Green Bay with LaFleur. It is pass happy, and I simply think that JJ McCarthy is not yet, not full stop, but just not yet equipped to handle that. And I think that is the problem. And I think that he currently doesn't trust McCarthy to do what he wants to do, because otherwise he's going to throw loads of interceptions and he's going to be the one that's getting crucified. And as I said, you're coming off 14 wins. That's big shoes to fill. But, well, go on. You want to say something?
No, I was saying, Dom, should we wrap it up there? Or should I give you one more ugly?
I've got one more ugly. Let's wrap it up. I've got one more ugly, which is the Chicago Bears. I think this deserves to be mentioned because... do I think it's like properly ugly? I don't know if I do, but I do think that Caleb Williams' interception was ugly. That boneheaded play was really, really ugly. However, Kurt Warner did a brilliant breakdown showing that there were 3 receivers basically in a line down the field, all on top of one another. And I that's kind of jarring me, because that's what the issue was last year, that the spacing of the wide receivers was all over the shop, and that Caleb Williams was kind of losing immediately after the snap, not because he was doing anything wrong, but because the offense around him was kind of imploding. Ben Johnson is better than that. I don't know if it was a receiver was running around at the wrong depth, or if it was just a bad play call. I don't know, but yes, it was a terrible, terrible throw by Caleb Williams. Even though there are 3 receivers on top of each other, you still shouldn't throw that ball, or at least have it thrown as an interception. But things are not going right in Chicago. You've got your 2 draft picks from this year, Ozzie Trapillo and Shamar Turner, second and third round picks. They're healthy scratches. You've got that offensive line was dropped in the second round. You have a bad offensive line at the moment, it seems like. I think Jonah Jackson did not have a good game. What do you think about the Bears now?
I don't think that it's panic stations for Caleb Williams. But the one thing that from college was his biggest negative has stayed in the NFL, which I really think it wouldn't, which is him holding onto the ball for hours and hours and hours. I think the Bears chucked a lot of money at their offensive line, a lot of draft capital in their offensive line over the last couple seasons. It doesn't matter if you're holding the ball for 6 seconds. You could have the best offensive line of all time. He needs to get the ball out quicker, and that's on him. And unfortunately, he's not doing it. And Ben Johnson is a great offensive mind. I'm sure can cultivate Caleb Williams, but he needs to get the ball out quicker.
Yeah, I would also say that my biggest concern around Caleb right now is that there's suddenly, and this wasn't on his tape from USC, is that suddenly his accuracy is all over the place. Like he is spraying the ball, like it is hitting receivers' feet, he is airmailing them. That's a little bit concerning. But what I'll end it on before we then wrap up is that Tom Brady had a great interview with Chris Collinsworth on Chris Collinsworth's show, and he was talking about Chris Collinsworth said, you know, now that quarterbacks are playing in 7-on-7, they've got starts in college, they've been playing in pro offenses since high school, they've been having personal coaches for years. I'm ready to say that if a quarterback isn't looking like the guy by Thanksgiving of his second year, then I think he's done. And Brady was like, well, you've got to take into consideration, like, has he had the development necessary to be a quarterback in the NFL? And I think that's kind of what I have a bit of a protection, a bit of a soft spot for Bryce Young, because I do feel like with Caleb Williams having 3 offensive coordinators in a single year last year, not being shown how to watch film, the Bears, you know, the Caleb Williams and his family already being worried about Caleb going to the Bears. I do kind of think this is I'm kind of treating this like it's Caleb Williams' rookie season, frankly. And I don't think it's time to panic about Caleb at all. I think that people are kind of, he's always had a bit of like bad PR, Caleb, you know, with the nail painting and wearing a dress, which is just bloody ridiculous, by the way. Not Caleb doing those things, but people can't as much.
Woke nonsense.
Absolute woke nonsense. Not in my country. But I do think like he just always has a bit of bad PR, unfortunately. And that's kind of followed him, and you do get like a certain kind of viewpoint when you're on the first overall pick. But I think there's some ugly things again brewing in Chicago, which I really hope go away, because me and you are kind of always quite a bit too high on the Bears. We do drink the off-season winner Kool-Aid.
Yeah, no, I've got every year I get clipped with the Bears, and I'm just not going to say anything good about them until they reach the playoffs. If they reach the playoffs, because I'm sure it's my fault at this point, because they can't be improving their team so much and still being so bad.
They are 0-2, and they are behind it in a very, very tough division. So it's not looking likely, unfortunately. But that has been the good, the bad, and the ugly from NFL Week 2. Make sure you leave a comment down below. What do you think was good? What do you think was bad? What do you think was ugly from this week? Do you agree or disagree with anything that we've said? Do leave it all below in the comments down below. Me and New read them. We love the diabolical ball takes from time to time. Make sure you leave a like. Make sure you subscribe for more NFL content. But I've been our host, Dom Corbs. That's my co-host, Nick Corbs. We'll see you on the next video.
See ya.